Hello everyone. So in today's video we're going to be looking at the Perilous Trials 9th trial in the game, Seal the Awakening Dragon. And as I've done with previous trial videos, I'm going to start by taking a look at the skills of the dragon as it's written in the UI here, and then we'll dive in and look at the actual fight and see how those mechanics come into play. So here you can see all the various trials, and over here we have Seal the Awakening Dragon. So as always, you click on the right hand side here in monster details and you get a breakdown of all of the skills of the boss you'll be facing. So let's take a look. First off, I will highlight that this is a volcano zone arena. So this is the same as the actual dragon, and if you have any artifacts that boost volcano damage or anything like that, this will also take effect against this boss as well. So important to note, if you're sitting on some extra artifact mats, that you can power up your volcano artifacts to get some extra damage against this trial boss. So let's take a look and try to understand what this dragon is all about. So this dragon is somewhat similar to the dragon that you will have faced both in the first pre-class change and first class change dragons. However, they've sort of mixed and matched some of the abilities in both those dragons and added some additional mechanics. So this is a two-phase fight, and I will go through both phases, understanding all these mechanics, and then we'll jump into the fight like I said. So first off, the things that you need to understand, and I'll go in a different order than they have it written here because I prefer a different order. So the first ability that you're going to be looking out for is going to be this curse mark. So actually we'll start at the top. So this curse mark is very similar to what you would expect from the second dragon. Now, after 4 seconds, a sector explodes, dealing a large amount of damage and applying a stack of curse vulnerability, increasing the damage they take from further explosions, which is stackable. So this works similar to the second dragon, except when you're fighting this dragon, this curse mark does not light up the section that will blow up. Instead, you have to look at the dragon and you will see rings around the dragon that slowly descend to the ground, and when it touches the ground, that section will explode. So you need to actually pay attention here to the rings around the dragon in order to understand where to move. And in this case, you want to move outside of the symbols the symbol that he has around him, because otherwise it will blow up, and every time you mess up and stand in the wrong area, you'll take progressively more and more damage. So very important to keep that in mind. And yeah, so okay, so yeah, this ability comes, like I said, like quite often, like I said, roughly every 12 seconds or so. So next up you have, and this is just movement. Like how to avoid this ability, just pay attention. Everyone should move, and just be careful. One thing I would say is, it's possible here for this ability to move to a zone that was about to explode too early. So if you're in Star and he's gonna blow up Star, and you quickly move to Moon, and then you see Moon is next, and you just move back to Star. If you're too fast, sometimes you can move back into the explosion. So just be careful that you're not moving back into a zone that hasn't quite exploded yet, because there is a small lag of when the symbol touches the ground and when it actually blows up. And so you will actually see the next symbol before the previous zone has exploded. So keep that in mind. You can accidentally move into an explosion inadvertently. So the next ability that you have to contend with is Blacktide Burst. Cast the power of the Blacktide to corrode all enemies, dealing 970% attack as damage every 2 seconds for 15 seconds. This is an ability that the healer should be running Cleanse for, Purify, or whatever the ability is called. And if you're a healer, you should always watch out for this debuff, and you need to cleanse it when it happens, because it does deal a lot of damage to the party. So do keep an eye out for this. And this is a P1 ability. The dragon does not cast this in phase 2. So one tip I can give to a healer, if you have the presence of mind and you feel comfortable doing so, is it is possible to swap in the phase transition from phase 1 to phase 2, as long as you have your healing active for that, which I'll explain in a bit. you can swap from your Purify to another healing ability for Phase 2 because you will no longer need Purify in Phase 2. So do keep that in mind. One tip for healers is that you can swap your Purify going into Phase 2, but just remember if you don't beat the fight, you're going to have to swap back to Purify again when you retry. So it's a little bit more effort, but could be worth it if you're like very close to a beating the dragon, but you just don't quite have enough healing output. That could help you a lot because you'll get one extra healing spell for P2, which has a lot of party-wide damage output. So the next P1 ability you have to deal with is Dark Gaze. Continuously shoot a laser at the current target, dealing 900% attack as damage every 0.5 seconds for 9 seconds. And for every 0.5 seconds channeled, the damage increases by 29%. This ability shreds. So even if the tank pops their damage reduction, which you need to do by the way, tank, when you see this ability, this Dark Gaze looks like a laser. It looks like a black laser firing out of the dragon, directly targeting your tank. And this will, even with damage reduction shield up, if this isn't interrupted, and I don't mean interrupted by using the interrupt skill, don't get me wrong, I will explain this in a second. If this ability is not stopped, then it will basically kill the tank and then one-shot the entire party. It is a very damaging ability. So how do you deal with this? So what happens is when the dragon casts this ability, you will see a blue bar underneath his HP bar. DPS needs to save their burst within reason for this ability. So you need to have your burst ready so that when you see this blue bar and the channeling beam, you need to immediately burst the dragon, and if you deal 0.6% of his max HP, you will stop this ability. If you don't do this, it's most likely a party wipe. So once you do the fight a few times, you'll get the timing of when the dragon's going to use this beam, and know to save your burst, but not to save it for such a long time that you're like losing a huge amount of damage output to the dragon in P1. So just once you get used to the timing, and again, this is going to depend primarily on how fast your party is killing the boss. If you have a high DPS party, it's going to be slightly different timing than, for example, a medium DPS party. So just keep in mind, you have to get used to the timing of your particular party when this laser is going to come here. So you save your burst for this without saving it for literally like 45 seconds, waiting for this to show up, and you're barely doing any damage to the dragon while you auto it. So this is a balancing act that you will just get after you do a few attempts and understand exactly the timing of this. So again, this is very important. Tanks should definitely pop shield for this, and potentially even throw a taunt up just to have a damage reduction as well on top of that. So just something to consider if you're the tank, because it does deal a lot of damage. So that's all you have to contend with. This Ethereal Blast is just like a periodic damage, chip damage that you have to heal through, nothing too big. But that's basically phase 1. Now you get the dragon all the way down to the end of its first HP bar. This is a boss with 2 HP bars, and then you enter the second phase of the fight. So in the second phase of the fight, the dragon has a completely different set of mechanics, and it is a little more complicated than phase 1. So here's how it works. In phase 2, so first off, let me see if I can show you this here. So when you transition from phase 1 into phase 2, this is a very important thing to keep in mind, and that is that the healer needs to keep a very big heal up for this. Now, we tested it. Technically, I think the healer can arguably run barrier alongside the tank's taunt in order to, mostly negate the phase 1 to phase 2 transition damage, but most of the healers will run their, I think, whatever the super big heal. Isn't it divine healing or something? I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but run the super big heal for this phase transition. It is a lot of damage output for a long time. It's 900% attack as damage to all players every second for 7 seconds. So you do need to have one of your big heals ready for this phase transition, or it will just wipe the party. Now, one thing I can say is if you are having trouble staying alive in this fight, it might be worth running the Turning Point talent. I'm quickly drop out again and show this. I've showed this multiple times, but I always like showing it again. If you are having trouble staying alive, go get this Turning Point talent here. The Turning Point talent, you can see here, the disability. When taking fatal damage, enter an invincible state for 10 seconds. And this can be triggered once per battle. So this is basically an extra life in the fight. If you're having trouble with any one of the dragon's mechanics, this could be enough to save your party from a wipe just once and allow you to push through and get to the rest of the battle. So just keep that in mind, that that is an option. If you are having trouble and you're close but not quite getting there, that could be the talent that could push you past that. Okay, so now you have this big face transition attack, and then we start going through the rest of the phase 2 battle here. So the next thing that you have to worry about is True Flame. So the True Flame is similar to the second dragon, where the dragon will recite and in the direction of the current target, and after reciting, rotating slowly, continuously spraying pillars at a blah blah blah, etc. So all you need to know is this is the same flame breath you've seen in Dragon Bounty, except it deals a heck of a lot more damage. And the best way to avoid this is when you see the dragon, you'll see around the bottom of the dragon the direction that the dragon is going to rotate. Basically, go to the one square behind the dragon, like one square behind the dragon, where like opposite from the direction he's rotating. And then once he starts rotating, just keep tracking around him, basically a half step behind him. So every time he was rotating, you just keep moving around in the same direction he's going. One warning I will give you is if you are lagging behind and you are almost caught up with the breath, do not attempt to outrun the breath if it's almost on you. Let it hit you, take one tick of breath damage, and then continue rotating. If you try to outrun the breath when it's almost on you, you will take multiple ticks of damage and you will almost certainly die. This same rule applies for doing the actual dragon in Dragon Bounty. So if you are well ahead of the flame breath, you can just keep going in the same direction, just behind the dragon's head. Otherwise, if it's almost on top of you, then yes, unfortunately, you have to take one tick of damage. And otherwise, if you try to outrun it and it just catches up to you, you will die, because you'll take like 3 or 4 hits of damage and it's no good. So that's the True Flame, which he does cast quite often. So one thing with the Phase 2 Dragon as well, I will say, is he uses all of his abilities randomly, except for 1 or 2 of them. So True Flame, Corruption, and Scorched Earth, he will cast randomly. So maybe he'll start with the Corruption, maybe he'll start with Scorched Earth, maybe he'll start with something else. So just keep that in mind, that it is random what order of abilities he will use, except for a couple of them like Apocalypse, which I will explain when I get there, and etc. So do keep that in mind. So next up we have Corruption. Now Corruption is again similar to the mechanic in Phase 2 of the second dragon, the Class Change 1 dragon, where it places a random mark above someone's head, and after 5 seconds, if the player is not standing in the correct position, it will blow up at that position. So one thing that you have to keep in mind, unlike the Dragon's Bounty, the Dragon's Bounty will flash a big particle effect on top of your screen and show you the symbol that you have. This doesn't have that. It'll just show the symbol above your head. So if you're if all 4 of the party members are standing in the same zone, sometimes it can be a little hard to see exactly which symbol is yours, but you can zoom in quickly if you're having trouble seeing and then move to that zone. But if you're not having trouble with this, then all you have to do is make sure you're looking at your own character and not someone else's character, and run to the correct zone. Very straightforward ability to avoid, and like I said, it's a random attack pattern. The more corruptions you get, the easier the fight will be. So there is a little bit of RNG in Phase 2, where if you get lots of corruptions, then it's actually a much easier fight than if you get, for example, lots of Scorched Earth or True Flame. So the next ability is Scorched Earth. Now, Scorched Earth is an important ability that the tank is the one who is constantly on the lookout for. What Scorched Earth does is it locks onto the tank. It locks onto the tank and starts dealing massive damage. So the tank, when you get targeted by Scorched Earth, immediately pop your shield, because otherwise you'll die. This is a lot of damage. And what you have to do as a tank to avoid this ability, or not avoid it, but to not have this ability do its worst possible damage, if you stay in the same sector for more than 4 seconds, it will blow up that sector. So you as a tank have to, at least once every 4 seconds, rotate to the next sector and just rotate around and avoid staying in the same sector while you're being targeted by the Scorched Earth, which again is going to look like a sort of a a blasting fire beam, and there will be like a particle effect on the ground so that the tank can very easily see that they're being targeted by the Scorched Earth. And tank, you have to rotate around at least once every 4 seconds to avoid blowing up the sector you're standing in and most likely one-shotting you and anyone else in that sector. So this is a very important tank ability to keep an eye out. Every time you see Scorched Earth, pop your shield and keep moving around and around and around. Now, next up we have Apocalypse. Apocalypse is another big party-wide damage output. You see, anytime you see healing overflow, this means you're going to need to have a big healing skill ready because this will deal a lot of damage. And so every 25% HP in phase 2, the dragon, well, no, I say every 25%, it is roughly every 25% because 25% is when it triggers the use of this, but if the dragon is in the middle of using another skill, sometimes he'll use that skill first and then transition to Apocalypse. So it will happen every 25%, but it might happen a bit later than the 25% mark if the dragon is in the middle of a particular skill rotation, for example. So Apocalypse, not much anyone could do except for the healer. Healer, you have to be aware when Apocalypse happens. You need to have a big heal ready. Anytime you see this healing overflow, resting the wagon. Thank you, Muffin. As always, appreciated. Let's hop back into the UI here. My goodness. So, yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought here. Where were we? Yeah, so Apocalypse, every 25% this will happen. And the way it works is you just have to have your healing overflow ready, big heals to heal the party through this. Tank can help out as well by popping Taunt and making sure banner is up during Apocalypse as well. After the dragon casts Apocalypse, you will enter a energy depletion state. Very important to keep this in mind because after Apocalypse is finished, he enters energy depletion for 10 seconds where all damage taken is increased by 100%. So DPS, try to time your bursts. That means taking your skills off of auto if you need to. Time your bursts so that they are active during energy depletion because you will deal a lot of damage. And correctly timing your burst into the energy depletion will make phase 2 a lot easier because you're going to deal a heck of a lot of damage to the dragon and bring it down to 0 faster. So next up is probably my least favorite ability in the entire fight, and it did cause some confusion to a lot of parties in the beginning of the when this unlocked. Let me just see here. Sector Explosion. Yeah, this is Sector Explosion. Remember I said if you're not standing in the right place for Corruption, or if the tank doesn't move on Scorched Earth, it's going to trigger this Sector Explosion, which you see deals a lot of damage and increases. Yeah, so very bad ability. This is the really challenging one for a lot of parties, and it is quite confusing. So Multi-Chaos Infusion. Infuse multiple targets with chaotic power, dealing massive damage to the target's area after a short delay. Repeated hits of this skill deal huge additional damage. So the way this works is it's kind of annoying, because the reason why Multi-Chaos is annoying is if the boss casts this on its own, it would be fine. You have 2 players out of the party who are targeted, and they have this black aura around them. Don't stand in their zone. They shouldn't stand in each other's zone. 1 zone per 1 black aura player. Done. They will blow up their own sector. Nobody else will get damage. The problem is 9 out of 10 times the dragon will immediately after using Multi-Chaos Infusion do another ability, which means all of a sudden you're going to have to contend with a Dragon Breath or something like that while the Multi-Chaos is running. All you have to do is be very, very aware of who has the black aura around them and who is about to explode. And sometimes, I'll be honest with you, it's worth taking a single tick of the breath instead of trying to move into a zone where someone has Multi-Chaos, because if you're in the same zone as someone with Multi-Chaos, it is a one-shot. There's no 2 ways about it. There's no DR unless you're quite over-leveled and overpowered, even with DR damage reduction, this is still going to one-shot the party. Not one-shot the party, it's going to one-shot whoever's standing in the zone with the same person that has this infusion. So be very aware of this. Very annoying ability. And the boss will start casting this once they reach 50% in phase 2. Now, I know I talked a lot about this boss. This is longer than my usual explanations, but I tried to be a little more thorough. Some people have commented in my last videos that, I didn't cover what the tank or healer should do. So this time, I went into a little more detail as well, what the tank and healer should be doing in these situations. So now that we fully understand all the mechanics of the fight, all that's left is to jump into the video, us clearing it and understand with visuals. So, without further ado, let's jump in here and take a look at the fight. So this is phase 1. You can see the dragon is in its dormant state, and periodically they will cast certain abilities that I've discussed. So the first ability that'll happen here is Dark Gaze. So here's Dark Gaze. You can see there is a beam channeling towards the tank and a blue bar underneath the HP bar here. So you will see as soon as that HP, that blue bar is depleted, let's go, there, the casting stopped. You can see immediately as soon as we depleted the blue bars, the casting stopped. If you take too long to do that, it will kill the tank, which will then kill the party. So that's how that ability looks and works. Now here's a curse mark cast. You can see, like I said, there's no indicators on the ground anywhere. You have to look at these symbols that are around the dragon here, and when it touches the ground, and you will see what I mean here. Just before it touches the ground, you can already see the next symbol. So you can preemptively, if you'd have moved to a different symbol already and then moved back into moon before it touches the ground, you will take damage. So just keep in mind that timing. Boom. Okay, now we move here. Boom. And then now it's moon again. And then it's star. By the way, I want to show you this. This is a bug, but I want to show it because it happens to me a few times, and it will probably happen to you if you're unlucky. Sometimes there is a positional bug with this fight where your character will run for no reason and stand in the middle of two sectors here. This is very bad. If you see your character standing on this line here, it is a position bug. Do not let your character stand here, and click immediately one of the two buttons to get yourself back into the middle of a zone. Because when you're standing on the midpoint here, you're actually standing on two zones at once, and both star and sun will hit you. So just watch out for that. If you see your character bug out and stand on this line here, it is a bug. Don't stand there. You will get hit by both of these zones. Not very good. So just keep that in mind. If you see a character standing there, you have to just press a button and they'll go back to the right position. A bit of an unfortunate bug. Now keep in mind, we are quite strong. You know, you'll see that the fight is going through rather quickly, but it doesn't matter. The mechanics are still the same. No matter how overpowered you are, the tank is still using shield when their Blacktide burst. You saw that Blacktide burst, so the healer has their cleanse ready for that ability. Ethereal Blast, you see, is just the outgoing dem. So here we have Curse Mark cast again, and sometimes the Curse Mark cast will line up with the Dark Gaze. So even if you're moving to avoid the Curse Mark cast, you have to watch because sometimes it will overlap with the Dark Gaze. So very important that you keep in mind the timing of the Dark Gaze can sometimes overlap with the Curse Mark, which means that you have to be looking for both of those abilities and not accidentally forgetting about it. That happened. I've seen that happen multiple times where the tank is focused on avoiding the symbol, doesn't notice a Dark Gaze, doesn't pop shield, and gets one shot. Not one shot, but very quickly dies. DPS as well, not paying attention, don't see this, they don't have their burst ready, don't interrupt the ability, and the tank dies because they didn't deal enough damage to stop it. So just keep it in mind. That's why you can see here in the fight, I actually, you can see I actually had already put my skills onto manual, and the second that ability came, I immediately flicked them onto auto, and boom, you can see immediately burst the boss, and the blue bars went away, and the boss stopped using Dark Gaze. So then we go through the Curse Mark cast again. And now we're slowly entering the end of the first HP bar, and like I said, this is a high damage party. So all you have to understand is if you're not in such a high damage party, you will simply have a longer phase 1 and phase 2, which is going to be a rotation of these same abilities. Now, one thing I want to tell you is the phase transitions when the phase transition when the boss hits 0% in the first bar. Now, it didn't happen in this fight, but if the boss uses Dark Gaze when you're like 1%, if you transition the boss to the next phase, it will interrupt the Dark Gaze. So it may be worth keeping in mind that if you're like literally about to phase transition and the dragon casts Dark Gaze, the tank might be able to not pop their shield because you're going to literally only take 1 or 2 ticks before the boss transitions. Again, this is timing you're going to get used to when you start to understand the fight more. A little bit more of an advanced tip, so I don't suggest this unless you know what you're doing. But in theory, if you're about to phase change and you do get a dark gaze, your tank can save their shield because you'll just interrupt the ability as soon as the phase transition happens. So now we enter phase 2, and you can see the Dragon Liberation is cast, and the dragon wakes up and starts dealing massive AoE damage, which the healer was ready for, and casts their Divine Healing, I think is the name of the skill, which just deals big overflow healing to the entire... Okay, and then here, you can see immediately after the phase transition, the dragon casts their first ability, which is Scorched Earth, and you can see they're blasting the tank. The tank has this huge particle effect around them, and they start dealing massive damage until... Yeah, the tank saw it, pop their shield, and then you can see starts rotating around the arena to avoid blowing up that sector. So that's how you avoid the Scorched Earth as a tank. Very important. Next up, you can see here the dragon just cast the curse, this symbol, corruption. Sorry. So the dragon casts corruption. You can see everyone gets a symbol above their head, but there's no big particle effect above everyone. So you see the symbol, move to the right place, boom, nobody blows up. And now you see True Flame. So the True Flame, like we said, go to the sector that's just behind the dragon against this rotation. Now keep in mind, sometimes it rotates clockwise, sometimes it rotates anti-clockwise. So always look at the direction of these arrows and go to one zone behind the dragon, and as soon as he starts moving, then you start rotating with the dragon just behind him. And remember, like I said, if you do lag behind, like we were fine, I think, in this one, but if you do... Look, okay, that was dangerous. So our one of our players did take 1 tick, but we just about got away with it. So that's something to keep it. Now we got another corruption. Everyone moves to the right symbol. In this case, we were, mostly standing in the right place. Scorched Earth again. You can see the tank starts moving again. They pop their shield as soon as the Scorched Earth hit, and you can see it's a lot of damage output. So very, very important. Apocalypse. So the boss is now casting Apocalypse. I realized I thought it was every 25%. Maybe I was mistaken. Maybe it's actually every 20%, but we just pushed the boss fast enough most of the time that it was at 75% anyway. So forgive me if I misspoken. It was every 20%, not every 25%. But as soon as the Apocalypse is over, you can see the dragon enters energy depletion. And what I do, you can see in this fight here, is I actually keep my skills off of manual because I see my awakening is just about to come up. So I actually wait until this awakening is available. And once it is, I immediately turn on auto and deal an awakening hit. You can see my burst as a Dark Blade is kind of hilarious, since I take like almost 25% of the boss's HP bar in one Crimson Ring. So that is the class. This is a very silly class. So now the boss is at 30% and starts using multi-chaos infusion, which normally happens from 50%, but we did a lot of damage, so now the boss casts multi. And you can see here, you can see this black particle effects around the players. Don't stand in their zones. That's bad. And eventually, boom, you see it? That huge explosion. That huge explosion is what's going to kill the party. So in this case, I have it. The tank has to start rotating. Unfortunately, the tank did die here. So this, keep in mind. Remember I told you there's a talent that saves you from death. The tank got Scorched Earth and had to rotate into the zone where someone had multi-chaos. And boom, the tank died here. But because the tank was running the Turning Point talent, the tank survived and we were able to continue the fight. So this is what I mean about multi-chaos, is the boss never casts multi-chaos on its own. The boss always casts multi-chaos plus then followed up by another ability, which is going to most likely make you have to go into the zone where someone else is standing. So now, pretty much, True Flame, the rest of the fight, and now another Apocalypse, which is basically almost the end of the fight. Now my burst is coming up shortly. I didn't take it, well, I think I didn't take it off auto because, do you know what? I thought it had enough time that it's going to become available again before the end of the cast bar. I think I mistimed it by a few seconds, unfortunately, which was my bad. But yeah, you can see I just missed it, but that's fine. The boss is almost dead anyway. And there you have it. We beat the fight. So anyway, that's the T9 fight. I know this was a bit longer video than my previous trial videos. Like I said, I wanted to explain in a bit more detail what the full party responsibilities are, not just for the DPS. Hopefully that I was able to do that today and you found this helpful. So that's a wrap. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope you have a better time clearing the 9th trial in the game of Perilous Trials. So if you liked the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and hit that notification bell as well so you know when the next video will be uploaded. Join the Discord if you haven't already. I hope to see you there. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you in the next video.